This panel is going to examine, as we heard briefly, what it means to be an artist in the DIY era. So just as a bit of context, if you were an artist, let's say, in any time up to 20 years ago, it was much harder to just produce your own track. If you look back at the era of the 70s and 80s, there were so many gatekeepers before you got into the studio alone. And then once you made your track, getting that track onto the radio, there were so many gatekeepers that being heard as an artist was much, much harder. Now, with home studios and social media, that's changed. And today, I want to open up a dialogue between two Rwandan artists, creatives, who have made it without the help of a label or even like a management team external to them. They've done it all themselves with their crew, but they didn't take finance or like instruction from the outside, except what they taught themselves with their own tools. So that's really impressive, you know? And then on the other side, I want to hear why we might still need labels and why we might need support in distribution. So I'm just going to really quickly ask the panelists to introduce themselves, but from my point of view, this is a dialogue between self-made, self-managing artists and people who provide services that labels often provide that are arguably indispensable. So do we need labels anymore? Okay, can we start over this side? Are you just short introduction who you are?
Sema Sole, recording artist and member of Mellow Couch creative group based here in Rwanda. Rapper, artist. Just keep it.
Hello everyone, how are you doing? I am DJ Pius. I'm a full package.
Hey everybody, my name is Wendy. I am the regional manager for Ditto Music in Africa. We are a distributor. We have a DIY distribution platform, and then on the record label services side, we have Ditto Plus, where we get involved in artists and labels' careers. They continue to own their IP, but we provide the services that a label normally would.
Hello everybody, my name is Thomas Kartongele-Strauch. My artist name is Dogu. I'm part of a production duo called Ancient Astronauts from Cologne, Germany. I run my own label, Switch Stance Recordings, since 2001. Do own the publishing of our music by myself and in collaboration with bigger indie publishers, and I'm also a radio host and a DJ.
Great. And just for the record, East African Records is a studio based in Kampala, and we manage distribution for a number of artists, including some you might have heard of, DJ Shiru, Kenneth Mugabe, and in recording level, we've worked with Cindy Sanyu and various other, bigger names, but we also support upcoming artists. This is why we do these kind of education programs and projects in order to help artists understand the industry a bit better. Okay, so I want to start with Sema Sole. What was the kind of breakthrough moment for you that took you from, like a cool creative to like a hero of the scene?
Okay, so I think like many other artists, I started off music, just experimenting, just off passion, and decided to, just share it with the world at some point. And when that happened, I was not really taking my music career. I was not trying to get into a music career or like become an artist. But like seeing the reception and how people were engaging with the music, and people writing to me, strangers, not just like people that I know of, commending it, saying it helps them, it inspires them. That gave me like I'd say the thought to like take it seriously and actually now start thinking about and being intentional about things.
Okay, but how did you get 1 million plays on Spotify?
Okay, that was also like very accidental. So like this is shortly after taking out one of my projects, an EP, and So we were just like, you know, now like when you don't have an audience, obviously the early stage of your career, you're thinking about like, okay, how do I get this? Everyone that I play it is liking it. How do I, you know, get it out there? And I think we had seen this work for many other people, me and my collaborative partners. We started like pitching one of the songs to like TikTok influencers. We landed one. We had been doing this for many other releases before, and one of the songs you're talking about.
So it's effectively TikTok that powered that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and you know, just a small investment, not very small, like $100, and it was you know, the return on investment was crazy, but then it's not something you predict. It's not, you know, we're just hoping it does that, I guess.
Pius, would you say that Sema Sole is being a bit modest here?
Yeah, I mean, 1 million plays on Spotify and more. So yeah, he's being modest, but promotion requires a little bit of luck as well. Creatively, you have to be good. I mean, people have to be related to what you're doing. So if you have those kinds of views or plays, it's good. It's good for you. So sometimes it can be accidental, but a good accident. In creativity, there's also a good accident. So maybe he's being modest, or he doesn't want to share the secret.
Okay, so don't be modest. Tell us about your breakout hit. What made you?
Okay, first of all, mumeze neza, abumva Ikinyarwanda. I want to say hi to everybody who's here, most especially the creative industry. I met a few guys out there, so how are you? Thank you for attending. So, me personally, we have to go back like 15 years ago. So I started off as a disc jockey. So that means I put myself out there so the audience had time to read me, know me, accept me before I really ventured into creating my own music. So it was more of personal approach from my view, because I got to meet people, I got to do connections, I got to play for big musicians on stages, so we shared contacts and connections. So me, it was more of a personal approach. Yeah, so through connections, through, if I would say in the normal terms, through the grind. Yeah.
Great, and networking being absolutely critical there.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got like two really interesting takeaways from the first couple of minutes here. That for me, Sema Sole's genius was in making his music available to influencers. It's like fishing in a pond, and he landed a big fish. But if you don't have, you know, numerous rods and nets in the water, how are you going to catch any fish? So that's why I say Sema Sole is being too modest. He was actually putting himself out there, and the opportunity came and bit. Then we hear networking being absolutely critical. So Wendy, based on what you've heard, and also moving things forward into like distribution, which is your area, digital distribution of music, we've found out that both these guys distribute their music using DistroKid, right? DistroKid is a self-distribution service. So for the students from Kigali Music School, if you want to put out a track, you send it to DistroKid along with all the data about the track, who wrote it, etc. And then DistroKid will put it on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, and so on. But that's basically all they do. They collect the revenue and send it to you. Now, what Wendy does with Ditto Music is substantially more than that. So I want to hear from Wendy now about why your service differs from DistroKid, and maybe some observations on the way they release their music.
Absolutely. I think, look, as far as DIY distribution goes, all the platforms are more or less the same. This is something that has existed for many, many years across the rest of the world, but it's still a relatively new concept across Africa. So DistroKid happens to be big here. Ditto is big across most of the rest of Africa. I've done a lot of hard work over the last 6 years. And there's also CD Baby and there's TuneCore. They're all more or less the same. We just have the easiest to understand release builder, which is the nuts and bolts of how a release is delivered to stores. And when you pay for subscription or DIY distribution, that's basically what you're doing, right? Is that you are paying another service to take the song that you have maybe written, recorded at home and mixed and mastered at home, because it's easier to do these days, right? And you are using a service to get it out onto the more than 150 platforms that exist. Because if you're only distributing your music onto YouTube, then there's only one place where people can find your music. And that's not nearly as smart as making sure that your music is available at all the different places where people consume music, right? So that's why it's a lot easier for our African artists to reach their audiences around the globe these days using DIY distribution. But then, what happens when you need a label or more? Because the work of a label exists. These two gentlemen have figured that out for themselves, and they have done that work for themselves. But there's a stage in an artist's career or a band's career where the demands on them are simply too much. And on the label services side, that's where we step in. There are lots of different options, and definitely the music industry is one of those fine places where business and kicking against the rules collide. Because there are rules as far as metadata and Apple and Spotify's rules, and YouTube's as well, and you've got to remember your password. There are things like that that exist where you can't break those rules, but in music there's no rules, and your audience is all over the world. So that's why you want to make sure that you understand the business part if you're going to do it yourself. Now, as far as a label goes, if you don't have the inclination to understand the business part, that's where a label might still need to exist. That and many other reasons. But there are so many it depends moments, because honestly, it depends how big you are as an artist. The students here from the school, you guys are just starting out. And honestly, as far as signing to a label goes, you have absolutely no leverage whatsoever. You walk into a situation with a label that wants to sign you, and you are probably going to get the worst deal possible. Why? Because they're taking the biggest chance on you. For them, it's business. And that's understandable. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it just is a thing. Whereas if you decide to start out on your own and you grow yourself slowly the way that these fabulous gents have, one day when you find yourself in a position where you might want to engage with a label or want to engage with label services, you're in a better position to advocate for yourself. And I think that that's one of the smart things that, that you both have done, is that you have managed to promote your music in such a way to make sure that it gets out in front of people who you know will like your music and find your fans and engage with your fans and grow your fan base. And we should definitely chat later.
Great, thanks, Wendy. Tom Katongale-Strauch is a friend of mine. We've worked together on releases. I know for a fact that he's had a terrific time working in East Africa. He's worked with artists from Uganda and Kenya and also West Africa, right? But let's hear some of the frustrations you've had working with artists who don't know the industry so well, and they have kind of perhaps expectations of what a label might do for them, and also maybe some misconceptions about the industry. And I want you to think about this in terms of artists who could be self-releasing, but they don't really have the equipment to do that.
Yeah. First I have to say, because I know all the sides of the business, like the label, the publishing, being a DJ. I come from DJing, and then I started my label, and then I became an artist, and I never actually wanted to make a label. I just wanted to be an artist, but nobody really wanted us, or just some songs, so then we started it ourselves. And yeah, what is frustrating is that some artists, I heard this here yesterday on a panel before, some artists just like want to be just the artist that wakes up, gets high, makes some music, stays high, goes to bed high. and then the next day and the next day. And yeah, we all sometimes like to be high, but you know, if you want to make it a business, there should be more than that. And some people, and then it gets frustrated when some people just, you know, they just watch like the pop charts, the videos, like the bling bling and all this, and think like, oh, some friends told them like, you have a great voice, you can be a star and something, and then they just wake up and think like, I need a manager so I can just live on my lifestyle, and then they just come like, hey, I don't want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And somebody said it here yesterday, I think a manager from Nigeria, he said like, the best combination is when you have like a management, a label, but then also the artist that chip in with work, that like an artist who maybe has, let's say like released for a couple of years by themselves, or is doing their social media by themselves, so they know how to reach people already. They maybe have like already like a good core audience. And because it's really frustrating when you have somebody, you know this, like we know somebody in Kampala who is a little annoying because we've like, I want this, what are you doing, like, when is my song coming out, and blah, 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 and you think like, sorry man, but we have our schedule. We have to finish this and that first. Just because the song is ready, it doesn't mean we're gonna release it the next day. So there are these rules that we follow to make sure we have everything in line for the release, the promotion and everything. So yeah, it's frustrating that a lot of artists don't think about how it could be on the other side, like how it could be for the label or the publisher just to always watch this stoned artist and like, who sits there like a star, you know, like a star also is made by his own efforts. That's what I think of.
Yeah. Great. So, I mean, Tom is giving us an idea of the artist as someone who needs to interact very efficiently with whoever is helping to release their music. But I'd also like to hear from Semasole, like, you've never had to have someone like that, or at least you feel like you don't need that person. But maybe, is there a part of your experience which, like, damn, I wish I had that manager, or if I had a label, they could have helped me do X. What's X? What's been frustrating you where you think like, actually, maybe I do need a manager, maybe I do need a label? What are those moments?
Well, okay, for like my team, or the people that we work together, we go by Mellow Couch. We kind of do that for each other. Like whenever we are about to release music, we'll usually like have ideas and like strategize from what we know, or like just seeing what other artists that are doing what we want to do, have done and has worked for. I'd say the one time that I've thought about, about labels or like some kind of management was like, is usually when I'm thinking about like visuals, for instance. Like the visuals I want to do, the music videos I might want to do, might not be done by like with the financing I have, because I'm taking everything from my pocket. So I'd say that's the biggest gap. And usually, of course, you don't have to do that with a label, but like figuring out ways of accessing suitable investments that are going to like help you without having to like commit to a whole label and get into a whole get tied to something. I'd say is like one of the moments that I've felt, but at the same time we like to challenge ourselves as well. Like I have a 9-to-5, for instance, so sometimes I'm able to save up for what I might want to do, but also creatively, we like to say at Mellow Cash, like, what's the best that we can do with what we have, and maybe that's the fun part, and maybe that's a challenge,
I mean, you talk about being tied down, but if you're in a good contract, it's like you're tied by golden ropes, It's. How about you, Pius?
I mean, if I may intervene, how many established musicians do we have here? Please, by a show of hand. If you already do music, let me see your hand, please. Oh, nice. If you want to do music in future, let me also see your hands. So we have many people who want to do music. So, times have changed. You have to know that we live in a very different time right now than we used to live in 10 years ago. So, I believe that right now, if you have a good production studio and you can put out good music, and if you have anything, it doesn't really have to be very fancy. It could be just a phone. Just like this. As long as you are creative enough and you have something good to show, and a little bit of uniqueness, you don't have to do the same thing that I'm doing or he is doing. I believe that the exposure is there for you. So you don't really have to wait for a music label to come and find you. So you can start by yourself without waiting for the music label, so that when the music label comes, you have a negotiating platform. Because if they come to look for you and you don't have any negotiating platform, if they come, or if you go and approach them, of course, as a businessman, I will have to look at my profit, so it's going to be very challenging for you. If you're from Rwanda and you haven't started to do music, again, by the show of hands, please, who would like to be on my label? Okay, maybe if we give you a microphone, you tell me why. Is it because you think I have enough money to shoot videos for you, to do nice music for you, to create music for you? Or is it because you can do it yourself? Also, by show of hands, who thinks they can do it by themselves? No one.
Yeah, so that's really revealing, you know, and this is why I want to take this now. Because, you know, we don't live in an ideal world. Not everyone talented actually gets like spring into view and be this glorious artist. I know I'm embarrassed to say my age, but I've been around long enough to see geniuses like literally die unrecognized. And these are people who are some of the best musicians I've ever heard. And they didn't have good management, they didn't have a label, and now we will never hear of them. You know, imagine if Mozart's father had been a bit unambitious. Oh, you're good at piano, Wolfgang, you know, it's a fun thing to do, yeah? But Mozart's father was insanely ambitious and propelled this genius, and so we're still talking about Mozart. So now I want to hear a little bit from the other side. What are we missing here? Yeah, it's great, you can self-release and all of that, but we're really missing something here. What is it that is in the DIY era, what is not happening, and what could be happening if these artists actually did engage with professional distributors, with professional labels, etc.? Wendy?
Hard work. It's an honest truth. Not everything that you see on Instagram is real. Those artists that you respect and admire and love, the successful ones, are putting in so much work behind the scenes that you don't even know. Life is just like that artist that thought that life is about waking up and getting stoned and sometime during the day rolling out of bed and staying stoned. That's not what a successful independent artist is these days. A successful independent artist is doing all of the things for themselves, because the music industry is comprised of a number of different roles that need to be filled. And those roles, or there's work. There is a certain amount of work that needs to be done. To make a good song, someone talented needs to sing the song. To release the song, someone needs to fill in the metadata and put together the artwork, someone needs to make the artwork. To make the music video, someone needs to film it, someone needs to appear in it. All of this work that needs to be done can be done by various people. And in this case, the artists have done a lot of that work themselves, and that's what is not immediately visible. The production on the song, it could be done by one person, it could be done by 16. So you see there's a lot of maybes and ifs. And I think that the thing that nobody speaks about is that it's a combination of hard work and talent that's required. And it doesn't really matter who does the hard work on the label side. Either you've got to do it as the artist, or a label is going to do it for you, or a distributor is going to do it for you. But at some point when artists blossom, when they've worked hard, that work exists to do. And so many of the young, talented artists, or even older talented artists, they fail to notice that at some point they need to take off their artist hat and put on a label hat. If they don't have a label, they are the label doing that work, because that work exists.
Right, and Tom, Tom's a great storyteller, and he sometimes tells me stories about artists he's worked with or tried to work with that has gone horribly wrong. So Tom, what do you think is missing these days? Like when artists try and self-release, think about, those guys, you're like, man, this guy had so much potential, or this girl really could have been a star by now, but they did this thing wrong, and a manager, or if they were on your label, they could have done it right. What's the bigger pitfalls that you've encountered?
Maybe let me do it like this. I'm always impressed when I see an artist who doesn't have a label, but they have a release plan. They say, like, okay, every 6 weeks I'm releasing a new single, every 4 weeks I'm releasing a new single. My next video is going to be there. I'm going to this music conference, because this is how I always did it. I was an artist and a label, and I always traveled around the world and tried to find the people where I had a good feeling with. If it was distributions, license takers, like for sync licensing, and because that's what I also think about these days. We're talking about distribution and all this stuff. But of course, everyone also wants to have like a good sync license, and this is so hard to get, but you have to...
Explain what that is.
Synchronization license for TV, for movies, like in theaters, like music with moving pictures. So, or for some brand, like for Apple or I don't know what. And so I'm really impressed when I see that artists do it by themselves because they understood what it's about and they are going out to look for it. They're not waiting for someone to knock at their door, because that's normally never happening. Like if we look at like streaming numbers and all this, like on Spotify and stuff, like 1% of all the artists can live from their music. The rest is, as hard as it sounds, like it's hobby kind of thing, And now we are, like you said, like we are living in hard times with music. Like 10 years ago, it was much better. Now it's, some people already say, like, is this the point in music business where, because we had like 10 years, like with self-releasing and everything, everyone thought like he can be an artist, and maybe it's now the time that where like the wannabe artists are getting washed out. That's not my opinion, but some people already say it. Like, is it maybe where more quality comes back? And this is the moment for those artists that really have a passion for this and not wait for somebody to come and look for them. They go out and look for the people that they want to work with. They have the vision in their head where they want their music. This is also a thing, like, where do you want your music to be played? Like, I come from Germany, where I come from, like, we never had good music around us. So we started our own parties, we started producing music, but we never, ever thought about Germany as our market. We were inspired by Ninja Tune from the UK, Mowax, those labels. They learned me how to run an independent label where you treat your artists like as your partners and not somebody that you want to rip off.
Right, but there's a very interesting lesson there. You started off DIY before the digital age, right? So it's not like this is the first era where people have been able to do this. I mean, even me, when I was a kid, we were breaking open empty buildings to throw parties in the UK, all right? I can say that now because I'm not in the UK. But, we were really enjoying ourselves as DIY punks and, listening to electronic music, house, and we had to build those scenes ourselves. We weren't getting it from the BBC. So it's not like DIY is new. But what I think is happening right now is there is an illusion of success that comes with DIY releases that Wendy referred to. It looks so easy. You look at these stars channels and you're like, I can do that. But what I want people to think about now is, why were labels so important and so successful for so long? Can we really give them up? You know, and the most common question I get when we're working in our studio in Uganda is guys coming up and going, like, can you promote my music? And I'm like, well, I'm in my mid-40s and I haven't even got a TikTok account. So don't look at me, but I can get your stuff recorded and I can give you some advice on strategy and I can help you release your music. But you need to be promoting yourself or you need to pay a promoter. That ain't me. All right, guys, we've got 10 minutes left, just under. Can we have some questions from the audience, if anyone's got any questions? And please make them questions, short questions, and direct them to a member or two members of the panel. Okay, not statements. We want questions. Thank you. Short questions.
How you doing? T. Roy from Broadside Music, London. Just if I can pose two very quick questions. To the artists that had 1 million streams, how did you then monetize that? That's to you. And then to the distribution company lady. Right, as a label, what I find is that distributors, obviously they send you your reports on a monthly basis. How do you then, as a label, audit those reports? Because as a label, I can say that sometimes we question the reports we receive, but there's no way for us to actually audit what they're telling us, and then obviously we need to pass that down to our artists. So that's my two very quick questions.
So the question on monetizing, with DistroKid, it's like automatic. Your streams, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, they all have like rates, and over time, like because it didn't jump from like 6,000 streams to like 1 million, so like over time, some stream revenue was coming through to the distributor, DistroKid in this case.
Well, I don't really think that maybe you wanted to know the monetization like that. I feel like you already know that answer, but you wanted to know if we make enough money out of those streams. No, it's imbalanced. The percentages are ridiculous, and you already know that. Yes, a lot can change. Also, the percentages, depending on which country you're from, is different. For example, if you're from Rwanda, it's very different from if you're from an European or American country. The percentage that DistroKid takes is very different. It varies on where you're monetizing from. So those matters all count in monetization.
So that's a great question, thank you. And just to come back to that, the difference between DIY, you wouldn't have the advice that I'm about to give you on record label services. Once we see that a hit is viral, that's immediately when I pick up the phone to an artist and say, look, this is taking off, it's time for a repitch. Have you considered a different version, putting a different version out, getting someone else to jump on the track, making a remix? How can we take this thing that's clearly working and make it bigger? But to come back to your question, sir, about royalty statements, what a wonderful question. As a label, it's not only your duty, but it's your responsibility to understand how payments come in. It's the till of the music industry. And all of that to say that what we do as distributors is a complex job, because we're taking one product, and I'm going to answer your question in the technical detail that it requires. We take a product and we send it to over 150 different stores. Those over 150 different stores all pay at various rates for various plans at various currencies all over the world. So if you can think about all of those variables in your head, it is the biggest Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheet, because there's just so many different options. And then add a layer over that to say that they all pay at a different rate. So in other words, a payment from Spotify will come in monthly. A payment from Apple will come in monthly. A payment from Vivo will come in twice a year. So on your side, in order to accurately report to artists, and here I can only speak from Ditto's point of view, our sales dashboard has got various different options for how you can download royalty reports by artist or by a release, so by a title or by a single or by ISRC. But for me, I think what the easiest way for a body of work or a number of releases, so in your case, is that I would download an extended sales report by sales date imported. And I would do that like clockwork on the first of every new month, so that you are sure you're always capturing releases as they've been imported. Because like I say, if you look, one of the things that's confused this is the ability to see live streams on something like a Spotify dashboard or an Apple dashboard. Recorded streams as they are happening are not sales streams. Those sales streams are reported at a later date. So what an artist, like a DIY artist, might see sometimes on their royalty statement versus what they see on a Spotify dashboard, and that differs, and they're confused why. It's because those are the streams they've incurred now. Before Spotify does their checks to see, was there any fraudulent streaming on this? Were there any bots? What is autoplay? How many were editorial streams? You know, there are various different reasons why streams are paid differently, including where the streams occurred from and what plan. Was it a free ad-supported plan or was it a premium plan that stream was coming from? But I digress. So I would do a specific report based on not when the streams were incurred, but when the money from the streams or sales were imported by. So you might have, you know, in July, you might be paid for streams that were incurred in January. And I would rather record that in July's statement than January's, or having to go back.
Great. So that's a very detailed breakdown, and I think it also illustrates quite how complex the mechanics of music, digital music distribution is these days. Right, we've got time for like one question now. Or am I missing someone? This guy there.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Fivar, a Tanzanian hip-hop artist, entrepreneur, and a creative. I have like 3 questions that I would like the panelists.
We're out of time.
Okay, one. I would like to know about artists owning record labels. Like, at what stage of the career an artist is supposed to own a record label? And one last question that I would like to ask you guys. I've been knowing like we have 3 main record labels in the world, Universal, Sony, and Warner Bros. So does that mean in Africa, every artist is an independent artist, whether they are signed to other record labels in Africa?
Let's focus on the first one. And
yes.
Sorry, man, we're out of time. So Pius and Tom, would you like to answer this?
I mean, you can own a label if you can manage to own a label at any stage, because a label is a lot of input, as they told you already. A label is a group of people, because you can't do everything by yourself. Yeah, every person has their own work they do. There's a distributor, there's a promoter, there's a director. You understand? So owning a label really doesn't need you to be an established musician. I know musicians who are not even established, who haven't even made it that far, and they own a label that have musicians who are bigger than them. So at any time you can own a label. Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar. When I started the label, I wanted to release the music of me and my friends, and we were a crew. And I always thought, like, if you step on the scene as a crew, it gives a bigger impact than you're just alone and want to focus on yourself. So I thought, like, hey, we're friends, and let's represent our crew. And so this is how we started, and we were not that I mean, these were the days where you still could sell a lot of CDs and vinyls, and we were kind of like okay, successful, but then with digital, I don't know how that came, like, because we had started having millions of streams when me and my partner as Ancient Astronauts were signed to a bigger American label, and they released a couple of our albums. We were touring with them because the bosses of the label are big stars in the US. So we kind of like were happy to go with them on tour, could play for their audience. This is why I think also collaborations with other artists are always so important, like other artists from maybe from your country, from another country, because you always reach different audiences and for free, getting exposed to their audience. And then we were lucky because that label had like some good synchronization licenses for us. So I still read sometimes online, like, hey, I know this song from this EA Sports game and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, you have to be lucky, but also consistent with doing it. And so when we then got so successful with our music by Ancient Astronauts, this is where I actually took money from to invest into new artists. And it's frustrating sometimes, you know, when you build up a new artist that has zero following but super much talent, like to get to the first 1,000 streams on Spotify, otherwise you're not getting into the algorithms. Like, how are you going to reach this? Like, maybe through TikTok, or it's sometimes it's so hard to get to those 1,000 streams, you know? And yeah, it's...
You need a team.
Yeah, you need a team.
I mean, I think, so the concluding remark from my side, and I'm sad we have to wrap this up because we could go on all day, but my concluding thought is that, you know, no one's an island, you know? Not even Island Records are an island, you know? All these things, all these entities operate in a network of mutual support and competition. Competition is a great driver, you know? You don't need to be a capitalist to believe that. But competition just drives us to do things. But it also means that, like, you need a team around you, you need armor, you know, you need people defending you and also pushing you, you know? So that would be my takeaway, is that, like, whether you're doing it on your own with your friends, whether you've got a manager and you're interacting with bigger entities, or whether you want to enter the beast and you join this giant label and they do all this stuff for you, but you can't do it on your own. So that DIY thing is a little bit illusory. That's my personal thought. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you all. Sema Sole, DJ Pius, Wendy Becker, Tom Katongale Strauch, me, David Cecil. Good afternoon.
Round of applause for them once again. If we could have you guys standing for a quick picture together.